The forest's air is thick with the scent of damp earth and crushed leaves, the canopy above swaying gently as a late afternoon wind snakes its way through the treetops. In this cathedral of green, where shafts of sunlight pierce the gloom in slow-moving columns, a drama is unfolding that will ripple through the fabric of gorilla society for years. The ground quivers faintly under the measured steps of a silverback, a colossal male, his black fur sheened with moisture, muscles moving beneath the skin like slow, deliberate machinery. His deep-set eyes track every twitch of movement in the undergrowth ahead, where a smaller band of gorillas forages in relative peace, unaware that their world is about to be ripped apart. Kidnapping in the gorilla world is not an impulsive act. It is a calculated move in the evolutionary game of dominance and survival, one in which genes are currency and power is secured not just through brute force, but through controlling the very wombs of the next generation. The silverback's massive sagittal crest, a ridge of bone that anchors jaw muscles strong enough to crack stems as thick as a human wrist, gleams faintly as he halts in the shadow of a strangler fig. He knows the dynamics of the rival group. The leading male is old, his back fur mottled with grey. One of the females has recently given birth, and another is in her prime reproductive years. These are opportunities too valuable to pass. The attack begins not with roaring chaos, but with precision. The silverback charges, his chest-beating drumming out deep percussive booms that echo through the trees like distant thunder. Leaves and startled insects burst into the air as he closes the gap, each stride powered by forearms thicker than a man's thigh. The rival group scatters, but the intended target, a young female, hesitates just long enough for him to seize her by the forearm. Her cry is sharp and guttural, cutting through the forest as she twists and pulls, but his grip is absolute. The old alpha lunges in defense, but he is met with a brutal shove that sends him sprawling. This is not a fight he can win. Even in prime health, few males can match the sheer explosive strength of a challenger in peak condition. Once captured, the female's life changes instantly. In her new harem, she is never out of the silverback's sight. Every feeding spot, every resting site, every movement she makes is monitored. Gorillas, despite their peaceful reputation in popular culture, enforce social order through a constant low-grade tension. The silverback's surveillance serves a clear evolutionary purpose: to prevent her from slipping away, to ensure that her next offspring carry his genetic stamp, not that of her previous mate. It is a strategy repeated in primate societies from baboons to chimpanzees, a ruthless insurance policy in the genetic lottery of the wild. The ecological stage on which this drama unfolds adds another layer to its complexity. Mountain gorillas live in high-altitude forests where bamboo shoots, nettles, and wild celery are seasonal and patchily distributed. A dominant male who controls females also indirectly controls access to these prime feeding sites. By moving his group between resource-rich areas, he can both maintain their health and make his harem less likely to stray toward neighboring territories. This tight control over space and food mirrors the strategies of other herbivorous mammals, wildebeest on the savanna, for example. But in gorillas, it is fused with a high level of social intelligence and memory, as the silverback recalls which routes offer both safety from rivals and the best nutritional yield. Kidnapping also triggers a cascade of stress responses in the victim. Elevated cortisol levels can disrupt reproductive cycles temporarily, delaying conception until the female's physiology stabilizes. This is where the silverback's patience becomes part of the strategy. He invests weeks, even months, in guarding and grooming her, slowly integrating her into the group's social network. Grooming, while seemingly affectionate, also serves to cement bonds that make escape less likely. Over time, many kidnapped females give birth to the silverback's offspring and become loyal members of his troop, though this loyalty is born of adaptation, not choice. To a human observer, the scene may feel disturbingly familiar, echoes of conquest, captivity, and enforced dependency. Yet in the evolutionary calculus of gorilla life, such acts are not aberrations. They are mechanisms honed over millennia to maximize reproductive success. In fragmented habitats, where human activity continues to press against the edges of gorilla territory, the stakes grow even higher. With fewer safe corridors to travel, the ability to take and hold females becomes not just a matter of personal dominance, but a lineage's survival strategy. Even the forest itself shapes these power plays. The density of vegetation offers both cover for ambush and obstacles that slow an escaping female. Vines snag fur, buttress roots create tripping hazards, and the sheer verticality of the terrain favors a pursuer with the stamina and strength to close the gap. Gorillas are built for this environment. Their long arms and short legs allow them to negotiate steep slopes and dense foliage with surprising speed, making any escape attempt a desperate gamble. What is most striking, perhaps, is how the act of kidnapping ripples through the group's internal dynamics. Juveniles may show signs of distress, staying closer to their mothers and avoiding the silverback for weeks. Other females may adjust their own ranging behavior, subtly positioning themselves to avoid becoming the next target in a dominance shuffle. The captured female herself must quickly navigate an alien social hierarchy, learning the temperaments of older females and the boundaries set by her captor. Survival here is not just about avoiding predators, it's about mastering the politics of the troop. In this way, the gorilla's kidnapping for power is more than a single act of violence. It is a social maneuver that reverberates through individual lives, troop stability, and even the genetic future of the species. It is a reminder that in the deep green quiet of the forest, power is rarely gentle, and dominance is written not only in the scars on a silverback's chest, but in the silent, watchful eyes of those he controls. The forest canopy at midday is a mosaic of restless motion. Sunlight filters through the tangled lattice of leaves, dappling the ground in shifting patches of gold and shadow. In the middle layers of this living architecture, a group of capuchin monkeys navigates with the precision of seasoned acrobats, their long prehensile tails curling like living hooks around branches as they move from one fruiting tree to the next. The air is thick with the scent of ripening figs, and the chatter of birds blends with the constant rustle of small bodies in motion. But beneath the apparent harmony of the troop's foraging lies a quiet undercurrent of deceit, a social game in which survival and status hinge as much on strategy as on strength. Capuchin monkeys are among the most intelligent of the New World primates, their brains proportionally large for their body size, rivaling those of great apes in relative complexity. This cognitive advantage manifests in many ways: tool use, cooperative problem-solving, and in this case, political sabotage. In a fruiting tree, where the ripest, sugar-rich figs hang in limited clusters, dominance dictates who feeds first and who waits on the periphery. Lower-ranking individuals, especially young adult males or subordinate females, are often left to scrape together the less nutritious remains after higher-ranking members have had their fill. But in the dense, predator-rich forests of Central and South America, fear is as potent a weapon as teeth, and some capuchins have learned to wield it with surgical precision. The false alarm call is a carefully timed act of manipulation. The sound itself is indistinguishable from a genuine predator warning, a sharp staccato burst that can send the troops scrambling into the dense foliage. These calls evolved to save lives, warning others of snakes coiled in the understory or raptors gliding silently above. But a low-ranking capuchin intent on disrupting a rival's meal co-opts this system, injecting misinformation into the group's communication network. The effect is immediate. Dominant individuals, mid-bite, abandon their feeding perch in a rush of snapping branches, eyes scanning the canopy for danger. In the brief chaos, the saboteur darts in, snatching the choicest fruit or seeds and swallowing quickly before retreating to a safe distance. This tactic is not without risk. Capuchins live in tight-knit troops where social memory is long, and reputations can dictate an individual's future access to food, mates, and alliances. If a false alarm is too transparent or used too often, others may learn to ignore that individual's calls, a dangerous outcome when a real predator is present. The balance lies in unpredictability, mixing genuine warnings with strategic falsehoods so that the signal retains its power. Field studies have documented that some capuchins are adept enough to vary the context of their calls, sometimes directing them towards specific individuals engaged in feeding while leaving others undisturbed, effectively targeting their rivals without disrupting the entire group. The ecological backdrop to this behavior is crucial to understanding why such deception persists. Many of the fruits capuchins rely on are highly seasonal, appearing in brief, intense pulses of abundance. In these moments, competition is fierce, and the ability to gain even a few extra minutes of uninterrupted feeding can have measurable effects on an individual's energy balance and reproductive potential. For females, additional calories can influence ovulation cycles. For males, increased strength and endurance improve their chances in physical confrontations. In evolutionary terms, a well-timed false alarm can be a direct investment in future success. This manipulation also interacts subtly with predator-prey dynamics. By keeping the group's vigilance artificially high, a deceptive caller may inadvertently reduce the risk of real predation, an ironic side effect of their sabotage. However, it also means that the troop expends more energy in constant readiness, cutting feeding bouts short and increasing stress levels. Over time, this can alter the troop's foraging efficiency and even shift the balance of power, as dominant individuals weakened by repeated interruptions may lose their edge in disputes. From a behavioral ecology perspective, this is a form of tactical deception, an advanced cognitive skill once thought to be the domain of humans and great apes. It requires the ability to understand the cause and effect relationship between a signal and the behavior of others, and to predict how those others will respond in a given context. It is not instinctive in the same way as reflexive alarm calling. It is learned, honed through observation and trial. Young capuchins watch and imitate, experimenting with alarm calls in different situations, sometimes using them clumsily until they grasp the timing needed to exploit their troops' reactions without arousing suspicion. The social consequences ripple beyond the immediate theft of food. A dominant individual repeatedly targeted by false alarms may become hypervigilant, scanning constantly even in the absence of danger. This mental preoccupation can cause them to miss subtle social cues, creating openings for rivals to form alliances or challenge their authority. In effect, the saboteur weaponizes distraction, using it not only to access food, but to chip away at the stability of the hierarchy itself. Over months or years, such tactics can reshape the troop's leadership, creating cycles of instability that benefit opportunistic, politically savvy individuals. The forest amplifies the drama. In the dense mid-canopy, where lines of sight are short and shadows conceal movement, uncertainty is constant. A rustle in the leaves could be a squirrel or a snake. A shadow overhead could be a drifting leaf or the flash of a hawk's wings. This ambiguity gives the false alarm its potency. It preys on the evolutionary imperative to respond to danger without hesitation, because in the wild, the cost of ignoring a true alarm can be fatal. The manipulative capuchin exploits this primal reflex, threading their survival strategy through the very architecture of fear that has kept primates alive for millions of years. It is tempting to frame this as a purely negative behavior, a form of lying that erodes trust and wastes valuable energy. Yet, from an evolutionary lens, it is also a remarkable example of adaptability. In environments where resources are patchy and monopolized by a few, lower-ranking individuals must innovate to survive. False alarm calls are a tool, one among many in the capuchin's repertoire, that levels the playing field in subtle, indirect ways. They are also a reminder that intelligence in the animal kingdom is not always expressed in cooperation or problem-solving for mutual benefit. Sometimes it emerges in the art of disruption. The lesson of the capuchin's political sabotage is that survival in a complex social system requires more than physical strength or speed. It demands a nuanced understanding of the rules, and just as importantly, when and how to bend them. In the filtered light of the canopy, where every sound could mean life or death, a single call can shift the balance of power. And in the world of capuchins, that is a power worth wielding, even if it comes wrapped in deceit. In the dim green corridors of Bornean and Sumatran rainforests, where the canopy rises like a vaulted cathedral and the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and orchids, the orangutan moves in near silence. Leaves tremble faintly in its wake, the sound barely distinguishable from the wind. For most of the year, these great apes live solitary lives, their vast home ranges crisscrossed by invisible trails known only to them. But when a fully flanged male, broad-cheeked, massive, and radiating the musky scent of dominance, steps into this scene, the quiet rhythm of the forest changes. His arrival is not just a presence, it is a shift in the social atmosphere, one that smaller males and wary females feel long before they see him. Flanged males are the undisputed rulers of the orangutan hierarchy. Their wide cheek pads, throat sacs, and deep, resonant calls are not merely ornamental. These features are products of androgen-driven development, a physical manifestation of years spent in control or in patient strategic ascendance. The long call, a drawn-out bellow that rolls through the forest like distant thunder, serves as both a territorial warning and a declaration of presence. It can carry for over a kilometer, subtly shaping the movement of other orangutans who wish to avoid confrontation. For females, it signals that the forest's apex male is near. For rival males, it is a reminder of who holds sway. But dominance in orangutans does not rely solely on these vocal proclamations. In some cases, it takes a darker, more direct form, what primatologists refer to as forced copulation and mate guarding. In the dense tangle of vines and emergent branches, a flanged male may spot a lone female moving toward a fruiting tree. She might be deep in the heart of her range, far from her usual allies or kin. He approaches with a mix of stealth and brute inevitability, closing the distance without allowing her a chance to retreat. The ambush, once initiated, unfolds quickly. The male seizes her, using his size and strength to prevent escape, and then begins a prolonged period of physical proximity that can last days or even weeks. During this guarding period, the male stays within arm's reach of the female, shadowing her movements from tree to tree, intervening if she tries to move beyond his control. The objective is clear: to monopolize her reproductive window by ensuring that no other male can mate with her during her fertile period. Orangutan estrus cycles are subtle and not always visible to the human eye, but males seem attuned to the hormonal and behavioral cues that indicate optimal timing. Guarding ensures paternity in a landscape where encounters between adult males and females are rare and highly contested. From a purely ecological standpoint, this behavior makes evolutionary sense. Orangutans have one of the slowest reproductive rates of any mammal, with females giving birth only once every 7 to 9 years. In such a slow cycle system, the stakes for securing a mating opportunity are immense. For a dominant male, each guarded female represents a significant investment toward passing on his genes before the inevitable decline of his prime condition. But this reproductive strategy comes with a cost to both parties. For the male, guarding means sacrificing feeding opportunities, traveling less efficiently, and risking confrontations with other males who may attempt to challenge his control. For the female, it often means reduced access to resources and increased stress, as her movements are restricted and her energy expenditures rise under the constant surveillance of her captor. The guarding process is not uniform across individuals or situations. Some males adopt an almost constant physical hold, while others keep a short but insistent distance, blocking escape routes in the treetops with their larger frame and positioning. The rainforest's vertical complexity, multiple canopy layers, intersecting lianas, and shifting branch networks, becomes a chessboard in which the male's superior weight and reach create strategic advantages. Females, for their part, are not passive participants. Field observations show resistance behaviors ranging from evasive maneuvers in the canopy to vocal protests, and even attempts to recruit the attention of nearby males to break the guard. Interestingly, while the term predatory fits in describing the ambush and monopolization of movement, it is not predation in the traditional ecological sense. The prey here is reproductive opportunity, and the weapon is social dominance combined with physical control. Yet this courtship by coercion is not entirely divorced from the more familiar forms of mate attraction in orangutans. Flanged males still use their long calls to advertise, still display their cheek pads and impressive body size as signals of genetic quality. In some cases, females may even choose to remain with a dominant male voluntarily, particularly if his presence offers protection from persistent harassment by multiple subordinate males. This duality, coercion intertwined with potential protection, creates a behavioral spectrum rather than a single uniform tactic. The rainforest itself shapes the dynamics of this interaction. Unlike the open savannas where many primates live in large visible groups, the orangutan's arboreal world is one of fragmented sightlines and unpredictable encounters. Two individuals can be within 50 meters of each other and remain unaware until a branch snaps or a fruit falls. This unpredictability means that mating opportunities cannot be scheduled or defended in the same way as in group-living primates. Instead, control must be exerted intensely over a short window, turning the guarding period into a concentrated investment of time and energy. From an evolutionary perspective, the persistence of this behavior suggests that the reproductive gains outweigh the risks. For a male in his prime, a successful guarding event could mean fathering an offspring that will not mature for more than a decade, long enough for environmental conditions, population density, and his own dominant status to change entirely. For the female, the outcome is more complex. While the guarding may result in successful reproduction, it can also limit her ability to choose a mate based on preferred traits, and in some cases, it may disrupt her feeding and movement patterns enough to have lasting effects on her health. Long-term field studies have revealed another layer to this story. Males who rely too heavily on coercion may see reduced mating success over their lifetime. Females have long memories, and in a species where social encounters are rare, a negative past experience may lead a female to avoid a particular male in future cycles. This hints at a subtle balancing force in orangutan's social evolution. Coercion may be an effective short-term strategy, but it is tempered by the long-term costs of alienating potential mates. Seen from the canopy level, with shafts of light piercing through layers of leaves and the constant drone of cicadas in the air, this behavior is part of the rainforest's broader tapestry of survival strategies. It is not clean or morally neutral. It is a contested space where reproductive success is the currency, and both sexes employ whatever tactics their environment, biology, and social intelligence allow. The flanged male's guarding is as much a product of the orangutan's slow life history and fragmented habitat as it is of his physical strength. And while it may resemble the predatory pursuit of the carnivores that stalk the forest floor, it is a different kind of hunt, one where the capture is not for consumption, but for control over the future. At dawn in the mist-shrouded canopy of Southeast Asia, the forest is an orchestra of voices, and none is more distinct than the gibbon's song. It begins as a low, rolling note and rises into a fluid, elaborate duet between two partners, an acoustic signature that carries across the treetops, proclaiming territory, partnership, and mutual commitment. For decades, biologists held this duet as one of nature's purest symbols of monogamy, a bonded pair, faithful for life, using their voices to announce unity to the forest. But here, as the humid air thickens with the scent of blooming orchids and the sharp musk of morning rain, an unsettling truth emerges from beneath the music. Gibbon bonds can, and often do, break. And when they do, the forest turns from a stage for harmony into an arena for betrayal. Gibbons are built for fidelity, or at least for the appearance of it. With their long, powerful arms adapted for brachiation, they swing through the canopy in pairs, traveling in tight synchrony, grooming each other and sharing the duties of territory defense. Their duet calls serve as both a public declaration and a warning to rivals. This patch of forest is occupied, and the pair guarding it will fight for it. But despite their evolutionary adaptations for pair living, the social fabric between gibbons is not unbreakable. Researchers now know that monogamy in these apes is often serial rather than lifelong. A bonded pair may stay together for years, sometimes over a decade. But under the right pressures, alliances can shatter, and new bonds can form with startling speed. The triggers for betrayal are varied. Sometimes it is the arrival of a stronger, more dominant intruder, whose physical condition or singing prowess signals superior genetics. In other cases, environmental changes shift the cost-benefit equation of staying in a pair. A territory once rich in fruiting fig trees may experience a decline in resources, making it more advantageous for a gibbon to abandon its current partner for one who commands a better feeding range. In gibbon society, fidelity is not solely about emotional attachment. It is about survival, reproductive success, and the intricate economics of forest life. When a new suitor arrives, the shift can be swift and brutal. The newcomer, often a male in peak condition, will push into the territory with calculated aggression, challenging the resident male in a series of high-speed chases through the canopy. These pursuits are not reckless. They are strategic, designed to exhaust and intimidate the rival while impressing the female. The soundscape of the forest changes during such invasions. The once harmonious duet collapses into solo calls, frantic alarm notes, and at times, the heavy silence of tension. Females may begin engaging with the intruder subtly at first, trading glances during canopy crossings, lingering longer at feeding spots where he appears. These micro-interactions are the first fractures in the bond. If the betrayal occurs, it is rarely clean. The abandoned male may attempt to reclaim his position, launching violent counterattacks against the usurper. Gibbons, though small compared to great apes, are capable of vicious combat. Their canines, long and razor-sharp, can inflict deep wounds, and their powerful arms allow them to grapple mid-air in deadly struggles. In some cases, the fights end with one male driven permanently from the territory. In others, the loser may linger at the boundaries, a shadow presence that continues to threaten the stability of the new pair. These skirmishes are not just about territory. They are about the right to reproduce, the control over future offspring, and the erasure of a rival's genetic legacy. For the female, switching partners is not without risk. While a new mate may bring superior genes or a richer territory, he may also attempt to eliminate any dependent offspring from her previous union. Infanticide, while rare in gibbons compared to some other primates, has been documented and serves the evolutionary purpose of bringing the female back into estrus sooner. Thus, a female's choice to defect must weigh the potential for improved future offspring against the immediate danger to her existing young. From a biological perspective, these partner betrayals fit into a broader pattern seen across many so-called monogamous species. Genetic studies of gibbons have revealed that extra-pair copulations do occur, and that pair bonds can dissolve when environmental or social conditions change. In the lush but competitive ecosystems of Southeast Asian rainforests, stability is a privilege, not a guarantee. Territories are finite. Predators such as clouded leopards lurk in the understory, and seasonal fluctuations in fruiting trees can turn a once safe home range into a nutritional desert. Under these pressures, loyalty is often a secondary concern to reproductive strategy. Even the gibbon's most celebrated behavior, their synchronized duet, can be a tool in these shifting alliances. A female that switches mates will often adopt a new song pattern almost immediately, aligning her calls with her new partners to announce the change to the forest. In effect, the duet becomes both a proclamation of partnership and a public erasure of the past. To neighboring gibbons, the altered call is as clear as a flag being lowered and another raised. It signals that the social and territorial map has been redrawn. These betrayals ripple beyond the immediate pair. Gibbons are a keystone species in their ecosystems, dispersing seeds from the fruit they consume and thus shaping the forest's plant communities. A change in territory ownership can alter which areas receive this seed dispersal service, subtly influencing plant regeneration patterns. Over years and decades, the cumulative effect of such shifts can change the composition of the forest itself. In this way, personal dramas in the canopy translate into long-term ecological consequences, proof that social behavior in primates is never entirely separate from the environment they inhabit. What makes these betrayals especially striking is the contrast between the gibbon's image and its reality. For years, wildlife documentaries depicted them as paragons of fidelity, swinging gracefully in lifelong pairs. That image is not entirely false. Many pairs do stay together for years, but it is incomplete. In truth, gibbons navigate a complex social world where alliances are conditional, shaped by competition, opportunity, and the relentless arithmetic of survival. Beneath the serenade of their morning duets lies a constant calculation. Stay, or move on to someone stronger, someone better positioned, someone who might secure a safer future for their young. In the quiet moments after a takeover, when the canopy stills and the only sound is the rustle of leaves in a light breeze, the new pair will settle into their routine. They groom, feed, and patrol together, presenting a united front. But in a forest where ambition swings as easily as any gibbon from branch to branch, even this bond is provisional. Somewhere beyond the territory's edge, another voice may already be calling. A note in the distance that could, in time, unravel it all. The dry season tightens its grip on the neotropical forest like a slow, invisible hand. Leaves curl and fall with a faint crackle, exposing once shadowed branches to the harsh light. Streams shrink into shallow, stagnant pools, their surfaces broken only by the dart of thirsty insects. And in the canopy, where the green ocean of leaves hides an intricate vertical city, every fruiting tree becomes an arena of quiet warfare. Here, spider monkeys move with fluid precision, their long, prehensile tails coiling and uncoiling like living ropes. To the casual observer, they appear as social, graceful acrobats of the forest. But in times of scarcity, their elegant movements mask an undercurrent of cruelty. Spider monkeys are fission-fusion primates, their social groups fluid, splitting and rejoining depending on the availability of food. In abundance, this system minimizes competition and allows multiple subgroups to feed in relative peace. But in the lean months, when fruit is scarce and the forest's productivity plunges, hierarchy hardens. The dominant individuals, often larger, older females with prime feeding experience, begin to exert control over resources with calculated precision. They choose the ripest figs, the richest clusters of palm fruits, and the few remaining sap-rich flowers. And when a subordinate approaches, they do not merely chase them off. They enforce exclusion repeatedly, until the weaker animal has no choice but to retreat entirely from the feeding area. This is not random aggression. It is a form of starvation warfare, honed by evolutionary pressures in an environment where survival depends on energy efficiency and reproductive timing. In these months, every calorie counts, and the cost of sharing could mean the difference between raising a surviving infant or losing it. By monopolizing high-quality food patches, dominants safeguard their own reproductive potential at the expense of others. The expelled monkeys, often juveniles, low-ranking females or aging males, are pushed into marginal feeding grounds where nutrient-poor leaves and unripe fruits dominate. Over time, this nutritional gap weakens them physically, lowering their ability to compete or reproduce, and in extreme cases, leading to their disappearance from the troop entirely. The mechanics of this exclusion are as much about psychological pressure as direct confrontation. Dominant spider monkeys will position themselves in the most productive sections of a tree, sprawling across multiple branches so their bodies become physical barriers to entry. They will vocalize sharply, guttural barks and high-pitched squeals, signaling ownership to the rest of the group. If a subordinate hesitates nearby, the dominant may lunge without warning, chasing them off with sudden bursts of speed that leave no doubt about the consequence of persistence. Even after the immediate conflict ends, dominants may shadow the subordinates' movements, disrupting any attempt to find alternative high-quality feeding sites. This calculated deprivation has broader consequences for the forest itself. Spider monkeys are among the most important seed dispersers in the neotropics, consuming a wide variety of fruit and spreading seeds over vast distances as they travel. When weaker individuals are denied access to fruiting trees, their foraging range shifts to areas with different plant species, altering the patterns of seed dispersal. Over decades, such social stratification can subtly change the botanical makeup of the forest, influencing which species thrive and which decline. In this way, the dominant's social decisions echo beyond their own lifetimes, shaping the very architecture of their ecosystem. From a biological perspective, this form of resource control is not unique to spider monkeys. Dominance hierarchies are a near universal feature of social animals, but it is particularly stark here because of the spider monkey's dependence on high-energy fruit. Their digestive systems are specialized for rapid processing of sugary pulp, and they have less capacity to extract nutrition from fibrous leaves compared to folivorous primates like howler monkeys. This means that when fruit disappears, the stakes are immediate and severe. A dominant's decision to exclude a rival is not merely about asserting status. It is about ensuring access to the exact food their physiology demands. The strategy's effectiveness is amplified by the spider monkey's mobility. Their long limbs and tails allow them to traverse vast feeding territories, sometimes spanning over 800 hectares. Dominants can patrol key fruiting trees efficiently, moving between them before subordinates have a chance to exploit ripening fruit. This territorial fluidity makes it nearly impossible for weaker individuals to establish hidden feeding niches. The dominant's reach extends across the entire home range. Ironically, this system of exclusion also reinforces the social bonds among the dominant cohort. By collectively defending prime feeding patches against lower-ranking members, high-status females strengthen their alliances, often grooming one another after successful defense bouts. These grooming sessions are not just hygienic, they are political acts, reaffirming the coalition's cohesion and its power to maintain control. For the subordinates, the psychological cost compounds the physical one. Isolation within a species that thrives on social connection can be as damaging as the hunger itself. Predation risk adds another layer of danger for those pushed to the margins. The safest feeding spots are often high in the canopy's dense foliage, where cover from raptors and terrestrial predators is greatest. Excluded monkeys, forced to forage in lower or more exposed branches, increase their vulnerability to harpy eagles, ocelots, and even large constrictor snakes. In this way, starvation is not the only threat. Predators often exploit the desperation of the socially outcast. Researchers studying these dynamics have documented that mortality rates for low-ranking spider monkeys spike during extended dry seasons, especially in fragmented forests, where alternative food sources are limited. In such cases, starvation warfare may lead directly to the permanent loss of individuals, subtly reshaping the troop's social structure. Over time, this can result in groups dominated by a smaller number of reproductively successful females, amplifying the genetic influence of those who mastered the art of exclusion. It is tempting to interpret this behavior as cruelty, but in the context of evolutionary survival, it is ruthlessly pragmatic. For a dominant spider monkey, allowing a weaker member to share the limited bounty could dilute her own fitness and compromise her offspring's survival. The fact that it condemns another to malnutrition or death is incidental to the driving logic of natural selection. And yet, standing in the shadow of a fruiting fig tree on a parched afternoon, watching a gaunt juvenile slip away into the undergrowth after a swift, silent chase, it is difficult not to see the human parallels. Power in nature, as in society, is often maintained not just by strength, but by the ability to control the flow of life's most essential resources. In the final weeks before the rains return, the forest reaches its most precarious state. Fruits ripen in small, sporadic bursts, and every feeding bout carries the weight of competition. The dominants continue their patrols, sleek and well-fed, their coats gleaming in the sunlight filtering through the canopy. Below and beyond them, the outcasts move like shadows, silent and slow, their bodies conserving every scrap of energy. When the rains finally break, washing the dust from the leaves and coaxing the first blossoms into bloom, the troop will reform, tension easing as abundance returns. But the memory of exclusion lingers, etched into the social map of the group, an unspoken record of who held the power when the forest grew lean. The forest edge is not a line drawn on any map, but for the chimpanzees of the equatorial belt, it is as sharp and consequential as any frontier in human history. It is here, where the dappled shade of the canopy thins and the tangle of vines gives way to more open understory, that territory ends, or begins. The air is tense, still, carrying the faint metallic scent of damp earth mixed with the sharper note of crushed foliage underfoot. In these borderlands, the forest feels watchful. Every branch creak, every wing beat is assessed for threat or opportunity. Chimpanzee society is built on a deep awareness of these boundaries. Each community's home range is both a resource and a fortress, patrolled and defended by coalitions of males whose alliances are forged in years of grooming, support in fights, and coordinated hunts. Within the safety of the central range, females raise their young amid a complex social web. But at the edges, the rules change. Here, rival males lurk, waiting for weakness to show. In these encounters, dominance is not merely about display, it is about survival, and in the most brutal cases, about the calculated removal of future rivals before they can grow into threats. Border skirmishes begin long before any physical clash. They start with reconnaissance. Males traveling in stealthy patrols, scanning the trees for broken branches, scent marks, and the distant rustle of movement that betrays another group's presence. The calls of colobus monkeys or hornbills can serve as accidental alarms, alerting both sides to each other's movements. When patrols cross paths and one group gains a numerical advantage, the forest shifts in an instant from tension to chaos. Males explode from concealment in a flurry of branch-breaking charges, their hair bristling, faces contorted, and vocalizations echoing through the understory. It is in these moments that the most disturbing aspect of chimpanzee warfare emerges: infanticide, followed by cannibalism. If a rival group's female is caught with her infant, she becomes the focus of frenzied aggression. Males target the infant not only because it is vulnerable, but because removing it has profound evolutionary consequences. Each infant represents years of maternal investment and genetic potential tied to a rival male's lineage. By killing it, attackers erase a competitor before it has the chance to mature, while simultaneously forcing the mother back into estrus sooner, offering the possibility of siring her next offspring. The act itself is swift but violent. Once an infant is seized, the killing blow often comes from a powerful bite to the skull or neck, instantly ending resistance. What follows, the consumption of the body, serves a dual function. From a nutritional standpoint, an infant's body is rich in fat and protein, a rare windfall in a forest where meat is an unpredictable commodity. But the act of eating is also a social display, reinforcing the dominance of the killers and the helplessness of the victims. Observers within the attacking group may join in, tearing at the small carcass, each bite underscoring the finality of the loss to the rival troop. For the uninitiated, the image of our closest relatives engaging in such behavior is jarring, almost unthinkable. Yet within the framework of chimpanzee socioecology, it is a calculated extension of competition. Chimpanzees live in a world where survival is dictated not only by the ability to gather food or avoid predators, but by the dynamics of reproduction and inheritance. Evolution has not smoothed away the edges of this competition. It has sharpened them into strategies that, while abhorrent to human sensibilities, are ruthlessly effective in maintaining genetic dominance. Border conflicts and infanticide are not random explosions of violence. Long-term field studies have shown that they spike in frequency when resources are scarce, when community size disparities are greatest, or when one group has recently experienced a surge in male births. In such times, pressure on the boundary intensifies, patrols become more frequent, and the likelihood of an encounter increases. Males in larger coalitions are more likely to initiate attacks, their advantage in numbers reducing the risk of injury. The targeting of infants is selective. Attackers avoid wasting energy on killing without reproductive payoff, focusing instead on eliminating young that clearly belong to rivals rather than possible allies. Cannibalism following infanticide also carries subtle social signals within the attacking group. By sharing meat, males reinforce bonds and redistribute nutritional gains in a way that maintains coalition cohesion. Meat sharing in chimpanzees often strengthens alliances, and in this context, the act takes on an even darker significance, turning the body of a rival's infant into both sustenance and political currency. For high-ranking males, distributing portions to key allies can ensure their continued support in future conflicts. The repercussions ripple far beyond the moment of the kill. For the mothers who survive such attacks, the loss reshapes their reproductive trajectory. Without an infant to nurse, their hormonal cycles shift, and they may become sexually receptive within weeks or months rather than years. This can draw them into the orbit of their aggressors, especially if returning to their own community risks further vulnerability. In rare cases, females defect entirely to the victorious group, bringing their reproductive potential with them. A slow-motion gain for the victors that may be as valuable as the elimination of the infant itself. This behavior also influences the structure of the forest chimpanzee populations over decades. Communities that sustain high rates of successful border aggression often expand their territories, incorporating resource-rich zones that support more females and offspring. Their genetic lines spread, while weaker or smaller groups may shrink or vanish altogether. In this way, the brutality of infanticide and cannibalism becomes an engine of population change, sculpting the landscape of chimpanzee society in much the same way that territorial wars have shaped human history. Predators in these forests, leopards, pythons, crowned eagles, also influence the calculus. A rival group weakened by loss of numbers is more vulnerable not only to further chimpanzee attacks, but to these natural enemies. The removal of infants accelerates this vulnerability. Without future generations to replace them, a community's long-term survival erodes. Thus, an act committed in seconds during a border clash can echo for decades in the shifting balance of primate power. From an evolutionary standpoint, the drivers of such violence are not moral but mechanical. In the energy economy of the forest, reproductive success is the ultimate currency, and eliminating competition before it matures is a grimly efficient strategy. Yet there is an undeniable dissonance in watching hands so similar to our own cradle an infant one moment and destroy it the next. It forces a confrontation with the reality that intelligence, social bonds, and even empathy in the animal kingdom can coexist with behaviors that, to human eyes, seem like the darkest extremes of cruelty. When the battle is over and the victors retreat into the safety of their core territory, the forest swallows the evidence. Vines bend back into place, the calls of birds resume, and the understory rustles once more with the neutral rhythm of life. But for the surviving mothers on the losing side, the border now looms larger, more dangerous than before. Every trip toward its edge will carry the memory of the ambush, the chase, and the loss. And for the victorious males, the patrols will continue, their vigilance sharpened by the knowledge that in the politics of the canopy, strength is never permanent. It must be proven again and again, sometimes at the expense of the most defenseless lives. The savannah is alive with motion and heat. Pale morning light spills over the grasslands, revealing a mosaic of acacia shadows and dust-filled air. Beneath the thorny canopy, a troop of olive baboons fans out like a restless tide, females carrying infants at their bellies, juveniles darting between the legs of larger adults, and the heavy-set males keeping a constant watchful pace along the flanks. The scent of trampled grass mingles with the faint, musky odor of the baboons themselves, carried on the warm breeze. Here, in the open plains at the edge of the woodland, visibility is both an advantage and a risk. Every movement is under scrutiny, not just from predators like leopards or hyenas, but from other baboons. The troop's social fabric is held together by a complex hierarchy, one in which power is as much about cunning as it is about strength. Males establish dominance through a mixture of intimidation, alliances, and strategic displays of aggression. Conflicts are inevitable, over access to food patches, over mating opportunities, or in the tense moments when rival troops converge near a water source. But in the midst of these confrontations, baboons have developed a tactic as startling as it is effective: the seizure of infants as living shields. To understand the strategy, one must first grasp the value of an infant in baboon society. A mother invests months of gestation, followed by years of nursing and protection into each offspring. An infant represents not just genetic continuity, but social currency. Its survival is fiercely guarded by the mother, and often by her female allies. In most disputes, physical violence between adults can escalate rapidly. But the moment an infant is taken into the arms of an aggressor, the dynamic changes entirely. The mother's aggression halts, her screams turning to alarm calls, and other would-be attackers hesitate. In the baboon world, harming an infant is a dangerous move that risks sparking retaliation from multiple individuals, but using one as a shield shifts the calculus entirely. The act unfolds in a blur, unfolds in air. During a skirmish, when tempers flare and dust swirls under pounding feet, a dominant male will lunge toward a female, sometimes his opponent's close ally, and snatch her infant with surprising gentleness given the chaos. The grip is secure but not crushing, one hand supporting the infant's torso, the other free to fend off challengers. The male retreats a short distance, his posture altering from aggressive charge to guarded possession. The cries of the infant act as an auditory barrier, their high-pitched distress cutting through the air and freezing the momentum of the fight. From an evolutionary standpoint, this behavior exploits deeply ingrained protective instincts. Aggression toward a male holding an infant carries the risk of injuring the young, an outcome costly to the troop's long-term reproductive success. Even rivals that despise the male will often stand down to avoid the risk. In this way, the hostage tactic becomes a form of social armor, allowing a male to navigate volatile situations without resorting to direct combat that could leave him injured. But the strategy is not purely defensive. In some cases, males use the presence of the infant to approach competitors more closely than they otherwise could, leveraging the assumption of restraint to position themselves advantageously. Once within striking range, they may suddenly release the infant to the ground, knowing the mother will rush forward to retrieve it, while using the distraction to deliver a decisive shove, bite, or chase against a rival. Such moments reveal the calculated nature of baboon politics, where even the most tender symbols of innocence can become tools in a power struggle. This behavior is not uniform across all baboon populations. In troops where infanticide is common, often during male takeovers, the use of infants as shields is more dangerous, as rival males may be willing to harm them outright to undermine a competitor. In more stable troops, where the alpha male maintains control and alliances are well established, the hostage tactic is more likely to succeed without injury to the infant. The difference lies in the social stability of the group, the history of individual relationships, and the stakes of the conflict at hand. Long-term field studies have recorded intriguing variations in how males handle these situations. Some appear to have a history of borrowing infants, even outside of conflict, perhaps as a way of practicing or normalizing the behavior so that it carries less suspicion during high-stress moments. Others are more opportunistic, seizing an infant only when the immediate risk of a fight demands it. In either case, the underlying principle is the same. An infant is a high-value bargaining chip in the volatile currency of baboon politics. From the mother's perspective, the experience is one of extreme stress, but also calculated restraint. Charging at the male risks the infant's safety. Standing back risks the male carrying the infant further away, perhaps into a rival troop's territory. In these tense standoffs, mothers often pace, vocalizing continuously, their eyes locked on the infant. Allies may form a protective semicircle, creating pressure on the male to relinquish his living shield. Eventually, the male releases the infant, often unharmed, once the confrontation has cooled or the desired outcome has been achieved, whether that is dispersing a rival coalition or securing his own escape. The ecology of the savannah shapes the effectiveness of this tactic. In open terrain, the visibility of the hostage situation amplifies its deterrent effect. Everyone in the troop can see the infant's plight, and the social weight of harming it is magnified. In denser woodland, however, the tactic carries higher risks. The infant can be injured in the confusion, and concealed spaces reduce the public scrutiny that makes the tactic socially costly to challenge. In the long arc of baboon evolution, behaviors like this reflect the deep intertwining of intelligence, social structure, and survival. These primates are not just reacting to immediate threats. They are manipulating the perceptions and instincts of their peers in ways that require an understanding, however instinctive, of how others will respond. The hostage tactic is a calculated gamble, one that relies on the predictability of empathy and the reluctance to risk the life of the troop's most vulnerable members. The savannah in its heat-hazed expanse offers no judgment. To the observer, the sight of a male baboon cradling an infant in the middle of a snarling standoff can seem almost protective, until the context reveals the cold strategic core of the act. Here, in the delicate balance of dominance, alliance, and reproduction, the lines between compassion and coercion blur, and survival is often measured not by who can fight the hardest, but by who can manipulate the rules of engagement without breaking them. When the dust finally settles, the infant is returned, the mother clutching it tightly as the troop resumes its restless movement across the plain. But the memory of the encounter lingers, reshaping the dynamics of trust and tension within the group. For the male who held the infant, the tactic may have brought safety, dominance, or simply a reprieve from an unwinnable fight. For the others, it is a reminder that in baboon society, even the most sacred bonds can be weaponized in the unending contest for power. The rainforest never truly sleeps. Even in the thick velvet of night, when the chorus of cicadas gives way to the distant cough of a leopard and the low rustle of wind through the canopy, the undercurrent of tension remains. By dawn, that tension sharpens. The air, heavy with humidity and the scent of ripening figs, carries not only the chatter of waking primates, but also the quiet, invisible calculations of dozens of minds. Every troop, from the forest floor to the highest branches, is a shifting network of alliances, grudges, debts, and ambitions. Survival here is not determined solely by strength or speed. It is shaped just as powerfully by the ability to manipulate, deceive, and seize opportunity at another's expense. Across the primate world, we have seen that violence is only one weapon in a much larger arsenal. The chimpanzee's calculated infanticide during border skirmishes is not mindless brutality. It is a long-term strategy to erase rivals before they can grow into competitors. The spider monkey's deliberate starvation of weaker troop members is not a lapse in empathy. It is a form of population control that ensures the strongest keep their place when resources are scarce. The baboon's infant hostage-taking turns an innocent life into political leverage, forcing opponents to stand down without a fight. Each tactic reveals an uncomfortable truth. In the absence of written laws, social rules are enforced by whatever methods work, and morality is often subordinate to survival. It is tempting to frame these acts as cruelty, but nature's logic is rarely sentimental. These strategies endure precisely because they work. In ecosystems where predators stalk from the shadows, where food patches vanish overnight, and where a single injury can spell death, any behavior that improves reproductive success, even at another's expense, can be favored by evolution. The result is a social landscape as volatile as any predator-prey battlefield, but one fought with psychological weapons as often as with teeth and claws. What makes primate societies uniquely complex is that these tactics do not occur in isolation. They are embedded in a web of relationships that can shift by the hour. A male who holds an infant hostage one week might be seen grooming with the mother the next. A chimpanzee who commits infanticide may also lead group hunts that feed the whole troop. There is no permanent villain, only individuals acting within a set of shifting incentives where yesterday's ally can be today's adversary. This constant reshuffling keeps the social structure dynamic, but it also ensures a perpetual undercurrent of distrust. These behaviors also have ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate act. In spider monkey groups, the removal of weaker members through food exclusion can lead to smaller, tighter units that are more mobile and efficient in times of scarcity, but at the cost of genetic diversity. In chimpanzee communities, the elimination of rival offspring can consolidate power for a particular male's lineage, but it can also trigger cycles of revenge that destabilize the group for years. Baboon hostage tactics may prevent bloodshed in the short term, but they can erode social bonds, making future cooperation less reliable. Every calculated betrayal is a gamble. The payoff is immediate, but the debt may be called in later. From an evolutionary perspective, these strategies highlight a fundamental paradox of social living. Cooperation is essential. No primate survives alone for long, but cooperation is fragile. In groups where every member is both an ally and a competitor, the same brain that enables empathy also engineers exploitation. These primates must read intentions in subtle shifts of posture, memorize complex networks of relationships, and adapt their behavior as the social weather changes. It is this constant cognitive work, navigating trust, dominance, and deception, that has helped shape the large, socially sophisticated brains of our closest relatives. The environment itself plays a decisive role in whether these dark strategies flourish. In resource-rich habitats with abundant fruiting trees and low predator pressure, primate societies often display more tolerance and less overt manipulation. In harsher environments, where food patches are unpredictable, predators numerous, and competition high, these behaviors become more common, honed by the constant pressure of scarcity. The forest or savanna is not merely a backdrop, it is an active force sculpting behavior, rewarding the clever and the ruthless when the stakes demand it. Yet there is a strange stability within this chaos. Even in groups where betrayal and coercion are common, order does not completely collapse. Grooming still binds individuals together, coalitions still form to repel threats, and mothers still fiercely protect their young. These acts of alliance and care are not separate from the darker strategies, they are intertwined. A male who once used an infant as a shield might later defend that same infant from a predator, if doing so aligns with his long-term interests. In this way, the primate world mirrors the broader truth of nature. Cooperation and conflict are not opposites, but different tools drawn from the same survival toolkit. Why does nature allow it? Because evolution measures success not by fairness or harmony, but by who leaves the most surviving offspring. Strategies that improve the odds, no matter how ruthless, persist because they work often enough to outweigh the costs. Over countless generations, these behaviors have been shaped and refined, producing animals capable of astonishing empathy and calculated cruelty within the same heartbeat. The result is a social reality where justice, if it exists at all, is fluid, negotiated moment by moment, and enforced by the individuals with the power to act. As the sun lowers and the forest begins to glow in the soft light of evening, the day's disputes fade into the background hum of the jungle. A spider monkey, high in the canopy, guards a fruit cluster from a hungry juvenile. A male baboon, still dusted from the morning's standoff, sits apart from the troop watching. Somewhere along a disputed border, chimpanzees patrol in silent formation. The jungle breathes around them, indifferent to the politics of its inhabitants. Here, there are no courts, no written laws, no higher authority to appeal to, only the relentless negotiation of survival, where betrayal, coercion, and power plays are not aberrations, but part of the natural order. In this world, justice is not blind, it is opportunistic, strategic, and shaped entirely by those bold enough to enforce it.